Can I remake the backrooms in real life? Well, I guess we'll find out. The Backrooms, for those unaware, is one of the newish kind of internet lore / creepypastas that's blown up over the last few years, along with the broader topic of liminal spaces. So I wanted to try my hand at making a Backrooms inspired diorama and to try and recreate the original image. This image was first posted on a thread on 4chan asking people to post disquieting images that just feel off. From these posts and then the many others of weird, uncanny feeling places, empty of people that feel like they shouldn't be quite so empty, with something just a little bit off about them, to now whole YouTube series such as the arguably biggest Backrooms creator Kane Pixels and many other talented animators making found footage shorts. There's a lot of Backrooms content and lore out there, so I don't want to go too in depth about it all here, as it would be an 8-hour-long video just getting started, but there are some great sources online if you do want to learn a little bit more about Backrooms and liminal spaces. I'm going to link a couple of my favourite YouTube videos I watched whilst researching, aka trawling through YouTube for hours on end, and these two in particular I really enjoyed, and their explanation of liminal spaces and why they feel the way that they do. For me personally, I do tend to prefer the imagery that is just a bit empty and uncanny and weird feeling, rather than the versions of the Backrooms with all the different levels and the monsters and the jump scares. So unfortunately no monsters today, but if you do like monsters, please subscribe. That's a sneaky hint for the next video. Please subscribe and lots of monsters. Or maybe it's just one. We don't know. Monster, just subscribe, please. Please subscribe.
The only monsters are here.
So the goal is to recreate the original Backrooms photo as much as possible in a 3D diorama, but the original photo you're only looking in from one angle. It's kind of off to the right, looking through two walls. So the space that you'd see looking from the left, you actually can't see in the photo. Now I could just make it the same as the other side, which is probably realistically what it would be, but there's no realism here, so I'd like to add in one of my favourite liminal space aesthetics that seems to keep popping up in all of the videos and the lore and the pictures, which are empty pool areas. And so I got out my cardboard and I made this. And that is our build complete for this week. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate the views. Unfortunately not, that would be an amazingly easy video to put out, but this is just a mock-up so that I could kind of get the angles right and sort of play around with the proportions. So to get the actual build going, I started measuring out all the pieces of foam core that I would need. And the most important thing to remember when cutting foam core is don't use a dull blade. It will absolutely tear your foam core to bits. So please use your freshest, fresh blade, so fresh that it's sponsoring all the YouTube videos on this platform. Please sponsor me, HelloFresh. And make sure that your bad blades are tucked away in jail where they belong. And I used my Proxon to cut out all of the XPS foam, which I used for the sort of main thicker base part of the diorama that the pool would be inset into. I used a mixture of hot glue and wood glue to stick everything together, and this is kind of where I stopped for now. I didn't want to add on the front panels until I'd made the inside and I could really get a good look at how the angles were going to come together. And now this is where things start to go a little bit wrong. I don't know about you guys, but there's always just that one thing in a project that just doesn't quite work and it just snowballs, and then you're having a breakdown at 3 AM because you're a failure in life and you don't know why you decided to even do this crafting thing in the first place because you suck at it. This was my thing on this project, these tiles. I had the genius idea, I thought, that I would use the foam core. I even bought some foam core without the outside part, so not really a core, it was just foam. It was just sheets of foam, really, wasn't it? I don't know why. Anyway, I got some sheets of foam and I used the handheld hot wire cutter to make the lines and indentations for the tiles, thinking that I could make perfectly straight, tiny scale tiles this way. That was a mistake. I tried over and over and over again, but the hot wire tool was just too hot, I think, and it was just melting them too inconsistently. You had to go so fast to get it to not destroy the whole thing, and it just looks ugly. I mean, you can see it on the screen. It did not look good. I even tried to fool myself into thinking it was okay by sticking one down before completely giving up and abandoning. So I had to come up with a different plan. And there I was, late at night, having another breakdown, and it hit me. Granny grating. If you don't know what granny grating is, it's this kind of cross-stitch canvas. Like so many of the other things in my crafting life, I've stolen this product from Studson Studio. I mean, not actually physically stolen it from him, obviously. I mean, I saw it, he used it in his videos, okay, and then I got it, but this is all me. I probably didn't invent it, but hey. I pressed the cross-stitch canvas into some super sculpey that I'd rolled out, and it made lovely little tiles. The only negative about doing it this way is that I think the grout lines, like the indents where the grout goes, are a little bit thick and not exactly to scale. But what do I always say? Scale is only a suggestion. I made enough of those to cover the full pool area, and then I stuck them down with tacky glue, making sure to line up the tiles as best as I could. When I was putting on the bigger back panels, I started to notice they didn't look super even, but surely that won't matter and that definitely won't come back to bite me. So let's move on to the next step. And the next step was painting. This was the first time I'd really used my airbrush. I'd kind of had a little bit of a go of it before, but this was the first proper time using it, so my technique is not good. It's definitely patchy and uneven, and let's just move on. I mixed up an aqua blue-green kind of colour to go over the white base coat, and then it was time to grout. As an update on my last video where we, you know, had a laugh about the Lurpak tub and cost of living crisis, I do have two now. I can't afford to put my heating on, but this is just as good. Now remember when I said that definitely won't come back to haunt me, that they're a little bit uneven? Well, here we are. As I was grouting them, I started to notice that the back panels, particularly the one on the side here, was just not right. I have no idea how I didn't notice that I hadn't pressed it down evenly at the time. I think this must have been the first one that I did, and I just moved on. I really should have redone it, but I really want to rip this thing off and start again, but I stopped myself and I said, you know what, let's just try something else. So I got the airbrush back out, used the last of the white, brushed on the blue, and used a whitewash to sort of indicate that the grout was there, but not make it too obvious that it was entirely uneven. So the ceiling's up next, and in the original image you can see that sort of officey panelled type roof. You know, the ones that usually have at least a couple of the panels kicked out or jolted out of place. I cut out mat board to act as the main panels, and that sort of thin, flexible, cheap, not really good for anything chopping board to make the light panels. I had to use a couple of layers of the chopping board material to make it opaque enough that the lights didn't just show through, but it worked okay in the end. But before I could install the light panels, we needed to give this thing a paint job. And for that I mixed up the perfect shade of off-white that can only become that discoloured from the evaporating tears of office workers who've only been getting staff pizza parties instead of pay rises for the last 15 years. Stippling the paint with a sponge really brings out that lumpy asbestos ceiling vibe, and a light brown wash really seals in the feeling of, well, it was the 80s and we regularly smoke inside in a workplace. My hot tip of the day is don't use super glue for a job like this because it does make the clear plastic go cloudy. So for adding the light panels on, I just used this clear glue, which doesn't do that and seems to hold it fairly well. Now it's time to get serious because we're playing with fire. No, really, I mean it. I'm using a candle to melt some plastic, and those fumes are dangerous, so use a respirator in a well-ventilated area at all times. I held some little plastic tubes that I lovingly emancipated from some old cotton buds over the flame to bend them into the shape I needed for a pool ladder. And again, be careful here. I am a trained professional, but and moving swiftly on with definitely no burnt fingers, I glued the now bent tubes onto some more of that clear plastic cutting board to make the pool ladder shape. And super glue was fine to use because I was going to paint it silver using my email colour. This is just enamel model paint and I find it gives the best metallic effect. And all that's left is to drill a couple of holes into the pool so we can use some wire to keep the ladder stable, and with that our sim murdering apparatus was installed. Now, because graphic design is absolutely not my passion, I had to scour the internet to find some Backrooms wallpaper designs. Luckily, Backrooms is absolutely popping off at the moment, so there were lots to choose from. I found this super detailed design that I liked, so I printed it off in different sizes with different tints on it to get to that yellowy hue, and this is the one that I thought looked the best. I glued the wallpaper down with Mod Podge. I only put this underneath because when I put it over the top it was just discolouring the paper. I'm not sure why, I've never had that happen before doing this technique, so I decided just to leave it off as it looked pretty good without it and make sure everything lined up correctly. I did do some tests where I cut the wallpaper into strips to emulate real wallpaper, and this is something that I usually do, but because my usual projects are more weathered with wallpaper ripping off and where the seams are more obvious, that does work, but here you really couldn't tell that they were in strips strips, so the extra effort in lining everything up really wasn't worth it. In the original picture here, you can see these little strips at the bottom of the walls. They don't quite look like skirting boards because they're not really touching the ground. I'm not sure what these would be, but we're gonna make them. You know that conspiracy theory about how the industry that uses the most glitter in the world is something you'd never expect? Well, that same idea applies to coffee stirring sticks, because you'd think it would be coffee, but no, it's crafters. So I took some out of my stash, split them in half, and used a wash to darken them. In our reference image here, it is clear that it was a bit of a longer space than my diorama will turn out to be, but one big enough to reflect that accurately would have been way too big to fit on the shelf I want to put it on. So I'm just going to try and get it as accurate as possible to what we can see in the photo. For reinforcement, I used some toothpicks and then tacky glue to keep the walls in place. The carpet in the picture does seem to be a bit of a deeper yellow than the one on the walls, so I found this dollhouse carpet online that seemed to match fairly well, but unfortunately until I can find a way to keep it moist 24/7, it's going to have to be a dry one for now. A good tip for making a template of a more unusual floor layout like this one is to just use smaller pieces of paper and tape them together so that you can fit around all the awkward angles. Then you can pull your template up, hope that you didn't flip it around the wrong way when you stuck it down, and trace it onto the bottom of the carpet. And after cutting it out, it should look like this. Except probably not, because why would you probably won't have the same exact layout as you know what I mean. The carpet is essentially a big sticker, but I did use some tacky glue as well to make sure it stayed down. Whilst the carpet was drying under the warm embrace of my 123 blocks that were keeping it down, I stuck on our wooden strips with super glue. Now onto every crafter's wet dream. Because it's liquid, obviously, don't be weird. I coloured the resin just slightly blue and poured it into the pool, hoping that there were no leaks, and for once there actually weren't. Although Backrooms and Liminal Space imagery is usually fairly devoid of objects, I did want to add in one of these pool ring floats. This one was definitely way too big that I ordered, so I decided to get some moulds and make them myself. They are also way too big, and so I ordered some more. I found this ancient smooth cast in my collection that has definitely been open for way too long, but I decided I might as well give it a go and see what happens. Spoiler alert, I definitely had to redo these. But nonetheless, I did use the smooth on pigments, which are really good, and I made some castings. Off camera, I did some very neat electrical work and hot glued down all these fairy lights. I do wish I'd been able to find cooler toned fairy lights, as I do think that would work better for the fluorescent lights we're trying to emulate, but I wasn't able to get any, and I think the scene is so yellow that you're not really going to notice much anyway. I used hot glue to imprison the lights in their foam core dungeon and stuck it into the diorama. And the last thing to do was add on the front panel, and here it is. Perfect. It was the first try, and that's a total lie. I tried a few times to make this front panel, and the patchy Mod Podge issue from earlier that I mentioned it was coming for me. No matter what I did, no matter how thinly I applied it, it was so patchy. And then I decided to make a second version. Well, actually this was like the third or fourth because I tried the Mod Podge thing a couple of times. But the second version I used not Mod Podge, but it meant the seams were really visible, which might have been okay if I did them earlier, but the Mod Podge made them so invisible that I didn't. So I thought in order to disguise the seams, I'll use our old best pal, the coffee stirring stick. I'll make it like a little frame, so it's like you're looking through a frame into the diorama. That'll be cool. And then I spent all that time doing it and realised, oh my god, the front panel is part of the picture. It's literally in the reference photo that I've been looking at this whole time. So I gave in and ordered some A3 printer paper so that there were no seams. And that brings us to our final result. If you're not careful and you clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you. Thank you so much for watching the video. I'm really happy with how the project turned out. There definitely were a few challenges, but I chose to include them in the video because, it's a bit of fun at the end of the day. But do let me know what you think of the video. Do you like me including the things that went wrong, or should I just sort of go for the things that worked in the end, keep it a little bit shorter? I don't know, let me know in the comments. I'm still trying to figure this whole YouTube thing out. But of course I appreciate you watching, and please like and subscribe and share and all those things that I'm supposed to tell you to do at the end of a video. I don't know. Just thanks, I appreciate it. And please tune in for the next one. There'll be another video coming soon. Catch you after.